Hello Internet, it's AndrewMycol and welcome to this week's AndrewMycol Podcast, the podcast where we talk about Power Rangers, Super Sentai, and more. Also, shout out to the Patreon members who will be seeing this podcast one day earlier. Today we are talking about the Power Rangers Dino Fury Red Ranger versus Power Rangers Megaforce Red Ranger. I had no idea what I wanted to talk about for this week's podcast. I get a comment from a viewer that says, and I quote, Power Rangers Dino Fury Red Ranger Zayto is just as bad as Power Rangers Megaforce Red Ranger Troy. For those of you who have not watched Power Rangers Dino Fury, the Red Ranger Zayto is of course the leader of the Power Rangers, right? We know he's from Ravcon. We know that he used to be a knight for the Ravcon Rangers, if you will. They were literally knights. They have a backstory of fighting off the Sporix. So it makes sense that when it was them that was fighting the knights, they all, at one point, the Morphing Masters gave them the powers, and they all became Power Rangers. Hence why Zayto is a Red Ranger, because he's one of the early knights. He knows about the Sporix. He knows about Ravcon. That is how we know about Zayto. Troy, on the other hand, wakes up in a school bus randomly having a dream about the Legendary War, which that is another topic for another week. But here's the problem with Troy. The problem with Troy is we know he does karate. We know he wants to save the world. That's it. That is all we really knew about Troy. He was a leader, right? He showed up late to class one day, and he saw the other ones. He saw the other people. He saw the other Rangers. And then, next thing you know, they magically, randomly, just went to Gosei's lab. And there you have it. That's how they became Power Rangers. Was they all 5 of the Rangers all fell in the same place. That's how they got their powers. So already, you're already making a comparison. One of the Red Rangers was an older Red Ranger who fought with his home base to fight off the Ravcon. So there was a reason how he got his Power Ranger powers. And then you have Power Rangers Megaforce, where the 5 Rangers just randomly got their powers after, they had an attack from the evil ones, right? So, as Megaforce progresses, we see that the Red Ranger from Megaforce, he has some moments, but really, come on. Troy from Power Rangers Megaforce is so stale. Where's the character progression? It's just like, wow, here are the Legendary Rangers. Oh, you want to stop bullying? Okay. But any Ranger can do that. It doesn't take a Red Ranger to do that. That's just like showing, hey, stop bullying. That's all he really did. Whereas with Ravcon, there's a reason why he's a Red Ranger. And the reason why we should care is because we know he wants to connect with the people from Ravcon. We know why he's trying to do that. We know why he was easily duped by one of the people in episode 9, spoiler alert. And we know how the other 4 got their power. We know 2 of them stumbled magically upon, finding their powers. And then the same thing with the other 2. One of them was a sprinter. The other one was their brother. And that's how they were able to get involved. So I get it that the other 4 randomly appeared out of nowhere. And they all have different traits. But I will say this. At least so far in Dino Fury, everyone so far has had that. Oh my gosh. Okay, that was weird. I don't know what happened there. But anyways, so with that, we saw where the 5 Rangers in Dino Fury then were able to basically learn how to be a better teammate, if you will. How to start trusting each other with the ability to take down the monster of the week. Whereas with Megaforce, it was just these 5 people began learning about the past, about the Rangers. Troy, it was just like, oh, he's a Red Ranger just because. And I've said this before, they could have used Jake, the Black Ranger. They could have used Noah, the Blue Ranger. They would have been fine as Red Rangers. Troy, it just felt like he was there, right? it was like he didn't have much emotion to him. At least with Zayto, he has a good bit of emotion, if you will, a little bit. But obviously it's early for Dino Fury, right? And for someone to say that Zayto and Troy are the same person so far, I think that's a reach. I think that is quite the reach. Because Troy is just, he's just, from the area. We have no idea who he is, really. He's just another person. Zayto, he has experience with fighting Sporix. And so when Void Knight comes around, he's like, I know who that is. Solon, she was also around in that time. So that's how Zayto and Solon have been able to get along. Gosei is like the cheap version of freaking Zordon, where it's like, he's just this person in a rock, right? And it's just like, you could tell with the effort in the shows, Megaforce just seemed like it was just there, right? Like when I was watching Megaforce a little while back, I was like, really? They could have done more with this. They could have done so much more with Megaforce. And you look at just 11 episodes of Dino Fury, and already you can tell Dino Fury's better. Now, I'm not saying that Dino Fury's a perfect season at all. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is this. I think that Zayto, as far as a character goes, he has an importance. There's a reason why he is the Red Ranger, right? Like, there's a reason why he is the leader of the team, right? And when he is making decisions, he's like, hey, we gotta do this. We gotta do this. Now, granted, Zayto is not the perfect leader. He is not. We've seen episodes already where Zayto has messed up. But that's normal because he's trying to adapt to the human form. But just like with humans in real life, we don't expect humans to be perfect. And so because of that, we don't really know what Troy is doing, though. Like, when you have Troy and the others, it's like, yeah, they're fighting monsters. They're doing Megazord fights. But what's new, right? Like, it was, to me, it just felt like Megaforce just felt like it had so much potential. But they didn't capitalize on it. With Dino Fury, you have the other 4 Rangers. Zayto met Izzy. They were able to figure out who Javi was. They figured out who Ollie was. They figured out who Amelia was, and they're playing to their strengths. Izzy, super competitive, but she learned how winning is not everything. We know with Javi, we know his dad gives him a really hard time, and it's like, will we see an episode of Javi's dad start being like, okay, maybe I need to trust my son more? We see with Amelia, she's this nerdy type. She's like this, someone that wants to get a big break. And then finally, a spoiler later on, we see the Pink Rangers start learning all these lessons that will help them later down the road. And we see with Zayto, he's learning how to adapt as a human. He's learning how to adapt and be able to fight the Sporix, right? And so the one thing I like about Zayto that I like over Troy is the character development, right? Like, so far, we are only 11 episodes if you count the 3 that are on Netflix. The 11 episodes we've had so far tells me that Zayto is going to progress. Now, granted, we're getting the Gold Ranger later on. So will we see some progression with the Red Ranger and the Gold Ranger? Will we see something like that? But with Troy and Robo Knight, it was like, yeah, Robo Knight just shows up. They were able to find the Megazord. They were able to get Robo Knight to get in sense with what's going on with society. How can he blend in? All of that. But to me, it just felt like Troy cared about Robo Knight, but it wasn't really like there was a reason to. It was just, Robo Knight's here. We need to figure out what he's doing and understand why they're doing that. So then we have, Zayto. And when we get Jordan or whoever it is, we'll be like, okay, they both might be from Ravcon. So it's like, we know why Zayto would care because they're both from Ravcon. So they can learn from each other and they can somehow get into contact with Ravcon. So in the end, they will be able to take down the Sporix, right? And now, what I will say about Megaforce, and I say this again, but come on. The freaking karate scene, yes, Troy knew karate, right? But what about that makes him a leader, you know? And like I said it with Zayto, and I've said it with my Power Rangers Red Ranger tier list. The reason I ranked the people that I did was because I ranked it not just on how good of a ranger they were, but how good of a leader they were, right? Because a Red Ranger is different than the others, right? A Green Ranger and a Red Ranger are not the same because a Red Ranger has the leader ability. The Green Ranger is that comedy kind of side character that's there, and they get their moments, right? Whereas what we see with Megaforce, we saw more of a character development with Noah than we saw with Troy. Noah, the Blue Ranger, he wasn't ever pushing for power, right? But we saw the one episode where the Blue Ranger not only was able to use the Black Ranger's axe, not the Red Ranger's weapon, but the Black Ranger's weapon. But the Blue Ranger also had this episode where he learned to use his senses to fight off one of the monsters. That character development is what Troy should have had. Because he should have learned how to be a better leader and learn how to learn from his senses, how to trust his teammates, how to use their teammates and come together as a unit to take down the monster of the week. We didn't get that. We got it with Noah. Granted, at least with Jake, he was a comedy act, right? Now let's look at Ollie. Ollie, we know, is the Blue Ranger. We know his mother is a scientist. That's how they were able to find the base randomly, right? So, of course, it makes sense why they found it. Which is the one thing I will say about Dino Fury, is that everything makes sense. So when we look at things with Dino Fury, and we look at how the Power Rangers got their powers, we saw that Izzy was running a race. We saw they were able to try and get people to get to be a ranger. Same thing with Javi. We know that their father had been around a Sporix somehow. But he's one of those parents where it's like, okay. And I like that trope because it's like that stereotypical parent where it's like, okay, yeah, monsters are real. Yeah, okay. But then when you look at Zayto, it makes sense why he's the Red Ranger. And of course, he knows how to fight. But the other four have no clue at all how to fight. We saw this in episode 1, where the Pink and Blue Ranger had zero knowledge how to fight or hold a weapon. The Red Ranger has the experience because he was a knight. So with that, it makes sense how they were able to learn how to be Rangers very quickly because they were learning from Zayto, right? Now, as we see with Megaforce episode 1, yes, all 5 of the Rangers have, 4 of them don't know how to fight, 1 of them knows karate. But then somehow, just out of nowhere, they just fight unmorphed and they get their butts kicked. And then somehow magically they say, okay, let's morph, and bam, everything gets better. At least in Dino Fury, it was like they had to learn how to fight. They had to learn how to get better. And over time, they start to get better. And then they say, okay, let's start using different dino keys. So they start doing that, and that's how they do that. And then as you see in episode 11, spoiler alert, we see with Amelia, she has one of the power keys, uses that, and that's how she got it. Because she was able to figure out how to use that key. And it made sense why they had it. So that was my main complaint with Megaforce, is that some of that stuff made no sense whatsoever. And secondly, it was just like every episode didn't lead to something, right? With Dino Fury, it leads into the next episode a little bit. Now, granted, some of the episodes are filler, I will say that. But at least there's something that progresses on and on. Just like we see with Zenkaiger, which I will be doing a first half of Mashin Sentai Zenkaiger review later this week or next week. We'll see about that. Every episode, some feel like filler, but they lead to something. It progresses to something. Megaforce, it was just filler all the time, except later in the season when they start to progress towards the end of Megaforce, right? So because of that, there's a reason you should watch Dino Fury. And if you just randomly watch a Dino Fury episode, yes, you might get lost if you've never seen Dino Fury, because there's something about the episodes to where it's like, how did they do this? How did they do this? And it's because, well, if you watch the earlier episodes, you will understand how they got their powers, how they do this and this. Megaforce is just like, all right, random episode, bam, monster of the week, go for it, right? And that's why I was like, come on. Dino Fury just as bad as Megaforce? Really? Really? You're gonna make that take? Anyways, everyone has their own opinion, I get that. But sometimes there are hot takes and there are bad hot takes. And I'm just here to say that no, Zayto is not as bad as Troy. There. Anyways, guys, let me know down in the comment section down below, what do you guys think? Do you think Zayto is as bad as Troy? Let me know down in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed this podcast, make sure you leave a like and subscribe. And until next time, I'm AndrewMycol, and I'll see you in the next one. Go, go, Power Rangers.